What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Douyu Cup. We have another elimination match on the way where Newbee.Young going to be taking on Team Braveheart. So should be a pretty interesting game, although Newbee.Young, I think, the favorites to win this. We'll see if Bravehearts can pull out something interesting, as we've seen in the past, and interesting is, of course, the correct word to use there. I'm Mikelorus, going to be joined by GrandisV for this best of 3. I don't know if you've seen any of the previous Braveheart games, but I have, I don't know, they pulled some really weird shit in the past, dude.
Yes, they do, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I think the chances for an upset are higher in this series than the first one, and Team Braveheart, if they can just pull something off the wall, it could be very entertaining to watch. That said, I think Newbee.Young are just a little bit more reliable, and their start is just as reliable. Shadow Fiend Rubik to respond to that Clockwork. Really nice to have the Rubik defensively against the clock, but Team Braveheart are no slouches either to follow up that Clockwork with a Gyro.
You got all the technology on the Braveheart side. These heroes work fantastically together. Clockwork, just being a first pick up against now an enemy Shadow Fiend, is going to guarantee that Clockwork, or not guarantee, but is going to help Clockwork get just a little bit of extra value in this game. Getting on top of Shadow Fiend with a call down on top of that as well. Even though there is a Rubik in response, it's going to be a lot of damage to the SF, and maybe he survives it with a mech, Yule Scepter, maybe he won't. So Bravehearts do have a lot of initiating power already on the board. With the Shadow Fiend picked up, it gets a little bit less likely that Newbee.Young are going to grab a Storm Spirit, so Spirit Breaker maybe going to be in consideration for them. But Shadow Fiend Rubik, it's a pretty solid combo. If you do rotate into the mid lane with the Rubik, maybe you have a Lion or an Earthshaker there as well. Should be pretty easy kills on pretty much any target. Even a blinker like Queen of Pain can very easily brought down, and Queen of Pain actually still is in the pool, so wouldn't be too surprised to see her.
Yeah, just any sort of setup disable for Shadow Fiend can get a lot of value out of the raises. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's a Juggernaut ban coming out from Team Braveheart and a Queen of Pain ban from Newbee.Young. No big surprises there, I don't think. As far as the other mid laners to keep an eye out for, Storm Spirit might also take a ban from Newbee.Young.
Yeah, just taking rid of all those pretty much top tier heroes who are still in this pool. Speaking of those heroes, Winter Wyvern, Undying still possibilities, as it'll be like a weird 4-position Undying for Braveheart. I'm not sure how much I like that, but for Newbee.Young, definitely possible that they go for that one. We have instead a Juggernaut being banned out by the Braveheart side. Kind of hard to evaluate both these strategies are going, and at this point you just ban out the strong heroes, you ban out the annoying heroes, because these strategies, both of them on either side, can very easily go in any direction. But I'm hoping that Braveheart do pull out something a little bit weird. I guess the only downside of that is that they're playing weird. Their weird strategies didn't really work out that well, so I don't know. Kind of a trade-off
Usually,
there.
at least from what I've seen from Team Braveheart, they do very well in the early game. They make good rotations, but they just flat out get out farmed. So I think their efficiency on the map needs to improve, but they make smart rotations, and their aggressive picks work out for about the first 10 minutes. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
And along those lines, Gyrocopter, Clockwork are the heroes that you want to have if you're in that type of business. Like, Clockwork thrives and really lives by aggressive rotations, and Gyrocopter, as far as carries are concerned, he is the one that you want to have on your team if you're planning on playing aggressively in the early stages, because Rocket Barrage is so deadly. We have a Jakiro being picked up super early from Newbee.Young. This is, well, going to indicate that they want to go for a little bit of pushing, since Jakiro versus Clockwork, mediocre to say the least. Versus Gyrocopter, not bad, but man, Jakiro, we actually are not seeing a ton of this hero, but we're seeing a lot more than I really expected.
Yeah, every once in a while he crops up, especially in these Chinese games. I don't think he's very popular in any of the other scenes, but we'll see him every once in a while. Combo's pretty nice with the Rubik as a support, or it could be played offlane. We'll just have to wait and see how these lanes shake down for Newbee.Young. But in general, I think he's a reasonable hero, offers a nice amount of AoE disable for the team, and Liquid Fire's early push can't be underestimated. Once you get like level 5 on the Jakiro and a mechanism up for the Shadow Fiend, if the Jakiro is played as a support, you can start mowing down those towers. And it's going to be a Storm Spirit instead for Newbee.Young, probably as a safe laner.
This is a little bit curious. Usually if you go for a Jakiro, you go for something along the lines of a Dragon Knight, because the only thing better than a dragon is 2 dragons, first of all, but also you typically want to have a little bit of extra pressure towards those towers. Storm Spirit, Shadow Fiend, or at least the Storm Spirit, isn't really a great pusher. Like, he doesn't really offer that much except for fighting under a tower, which is sometimes going to happen, but it's not really worth the pick if that truly is going to be your strategy. You do get guaranteed pushing off of this Jakiro, but generally I like it when teams go first a little bit more than just the Jakiro, since by himself could be a little bit awkward.
Yeah, and going to have Jakiro plus a mech from the Shadow Fiend. That's pretty much it. The Storm Spirit feels, at least to me, like somewhat of a deny pick. It would have been really good for Team Braveheart, even though there is a telekinesis to instantly disable the Storm Spirit. It would be very scary to have that raw amount of initiation from Clock and the Storm. So I think that is somewhat how this pick is going to function. It is going to show that Team Braveheart are taking a lot of time with this next decision.
Alright, so they already have one support up right now. This is not exactly the support you want up against Storm Spirit. Ideally, you would want a little bit of a faster silence or stun coming out. So in that regard, Lion, not looking too terrible right now. Lina got a rather early ban, so that's not going to be an option. But Braveheart definitely looking for a little bit more CC. Also looking for their mid lane up against this Shadow Fiend. And with potential Rubik Jakiro rotating in, it's not really the most deadly, but with Shadow Fiend just being such a house in the early game, it's definitely possible that this mid lane goes really poorly for Braveheart. They have a pretty nice initial setup, but yeah, they just need to finish it off with anti-Storm Spirit tech, anti-Shadow Fiend tech, and those heroes are, a little bit hard to come by.
It's going to be a Visage instead. Very interesting from Team Braveheart. I was really kind of holding out for something along the lines of that Lion, just a raw amount of disable from their other support. But instead, what they're going to get is a lot of early damage. This is a very threatening tri-lane. Gyrocopter, Witch Doctor, Visage can do a lot of work. They're 3 ranged heroes, and with Paralyzing Cast, that's really all the setup that they need to get Rocket Barrage flying. And once you have Rocket Barrage going, that fills up your Soul Assumption bar very, very quickly. So it's potent, but is it potent enough to make up for the fact that they are lacking reliable CC? I don't think so. I really would have liked to see Lion instead.
Yeah, I think the Visage is fine here. It takes them kind of on a different strategy. If Braveheart do not go for an offensive tri-lane, then I think this Visage pick is just not the one that they really wanted. But now with Visage, Witch Doctor, Gyrocopter, they have so much offensive power versus a safe lane that is expected to have a Storm Spirit and a second Omni Knight of the day? What the hell?
It's Christmas!
They've been practicing, man. They've been cooking up some weird things in the Newbee house, but this Omni Knight pick is going to be going off lane, and if that is to be the case, odds are he's going to run to a Clockwork 1v1. That's not really great times for an Omni Knight.
Oh, definitely not. Last pick for Braveheart. There is still the potential that they go for a Joe Ranger. She does reasonably well in lane. Inside mid, especially if there aren't rotations, and if they go aggressive tri-lane, they could lock down those rotations. But that said, it is picking Dro into a Storm Spirit, and that's a very difficult time for the Joe Ranger. Storm Spirit instantly at the beginning of the fight can get right on top of her, and even though there might be a gust, it doesn't stop the Storm Spirit 100%, especially if it has an Omni Knight behind him to offer repel. So it's very tricky. I think the Dro is okay, but instead they go for the Wind Ranger. She'll do markedly better in the laning stage.
And at the very least, it's another disable, right? Like, they really do need extra CC, not just up against a Storm Spirit, who is generally like a instant, oh shit, we need CC type hero, but also Omni Knight, perhaps to a slightly lesser extent, but if you don't actually silence him or get rid of him in some way, shape, or form, like even a Yule Scepter is fine, then the Purifies with the Storm Spirit in the middle of everything can get really messy really quickly. This is not your standard draft. Like, the Jakiro kind of feels out of place. I think if you swap the Jakiro out and then the Omni Knight is a little bit better then, but whatever. We have interesting drafts all around, lots of damage from the Braveheart side, and again, I think offensive tri-lane is the way to go here. Storm Spirit, the Jakiro, or Storm Spirit, Rubik, Omni Knight, or whatever, like, that combination isn't good enough to compete up against what Braveheart have.
Well, let's introduce our teams to the Raiden side. It's Newbee.Young with MRRR playing on the Rubik, supporting Piao on the Storm Spirit in the safe lane. Omni Knight running out with the Shadow Fiend towards mid. Melody Lover is going to be playing on that Omni Knight and SCCC on the Shadow Fiend, and offlane Jakiro by Iwi, running out with Boots first to place his ward.
And for the Braveheart side, Chan is going to be playing the Clockwork. We've been seeing kind of questionable Clockwork plays from him, but he has played it quite often. Chaoyue is going to be on the farming Gyrocopter. That's sure on the Visage, and then, well, there are other Braveheart heroes here as well, the Witch Doctor and the Wind Ranger. Looking for an offensive play, and this should be pretty much how they play this game throughout the entirety of it, amplified by the fact that there is going to be a camp blocking sentry ward right there being placed. So, yeah, Braveheart's definitely looking to lock down this bottom lane. Newbee.Young, this is pretty much, obvious. Like, we're seeing it from a mile away. So what are they going to do to actually respond to it? Are they going to try to dodge this tri-lane, put the Jakiro down here by himself?
I think that's probably the easiest course of action for them. Their heroes in general need a lot of experience, however, so maybe they try to go for some sort of dual lanes. That'll make rotations difficult, however, so yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Bottom lane with both the Sentry and the Observer blocking his camp, it's very unlikely it's going to be dewarded early on, but Braveheart, they seem to be dissolving their lanes at least a little bit. Gyrocopter is going to be going mid, That's not something that I expected at the very least. Wind Ranger, I think, fares better against the Shadow Fiend than the Gyrocopter. Gyrocopter has to get close and be away from a creep wave before his Rocket Barrage gets true value. And even though his attack animation is good, his damage doesn't scale as hard as Shadow Fiend. These first couple waves should be good for Choya, but I think the Wind Ranger as a whole would have a better time.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is maybe a situation where you go for the homing missile build, just because you do have heroes that can follow up after that big nuke. Rocket Barrage is only really good in side lanes because the enemy will be very far away from any sort of protection, or at least that should be the plan. But right now, like, we can see this position is more or less where the lane is going to stay. And SC is just a stone's throw away from his own tower, and the creep wave is also going to be super nearby as well. So there's a very low chance that he actually gets any significant Rocket Barrage in this Shadow Fiend. So the trade-off is that they have a Wind Ranger comboed up with a stun, but stun with Gyrocopter, like Cask into Rocket Barrage, that's significant enough. So I think Braveheart are throwing away quite a bit of laning, even advantage, by making this lane swap. It's going to catch Newbee off guard, obviously, but is that actually going to matter? I don't think it is.
And to be fair, the Gyrocopter is doing very well CSing against the Shadow Fiend right now. He's sitting at 4 and 5. His denies have been on point. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait. I think the bigger question mark for me is that they throw the Visage up top with the Clockwork and just go for straight-up dual lanes.
And if they had a Visage down towards bottom, they could go for some serious action on this Jakiro. He's a clunky hero, though he does have boots first, typically a little bit on the slower side. They're going to actually catch Piao and Cogs. That Cogs is very long range, however, pull out, and Chan-Chan's taking a lot of damage as Piao just sitting there right-clicking. Soul Assumption is there with one more right-click. They'll grab this kill. You need to salve up, not in time. Chan-Chan does salve up, and he'll live as Visage draws first blood on the Storm Spirit. I think the salve would have saved him there, but maybe just didn't want to burn that one.
Yeah, it's not a guaranteed save. I think it would have worked as well, but Piao going to save his money on the salve, but it cost him first blood. That's a big turn of events for Braveheart. I thought they'd be gimping their killing potential by going for these dual lanes, but getting first blood in the Storm Spirit's a really big deal. Storm Spirit, prior to level 6, is susceptible if he gets isolated a little way.
He's in a little bit of trouble right now. He's going to be shackled to a creep. Maledict as well. However, Liquid Fire on the Witch Doctor will burn him down. This Maledict will hurt, but it won't be lethal. The Purify also helping out the Jakiro there to stay alive. This is... I mean, they still have a lot of kill power up towards top. That's what they get from putting this Visage up here. But if you have the Visage on the bottom lane, you kill off the Jakiro. Trade-offs, of course, across the board. Newbee are also running dual lanes, so you kind of like have to evaluate it by a case-by-case basis. But yeah, it is going to be this time new Braveheart getting some on top, yet a little bit less on bottom. For the short term, shutting down Jakiro, shutting down a Storm Spirit, it's kind of even. Like, Jakiro gets a lot after every single level, but Storm Spirit gets a lot out of level 6, so it's, I think, going to work out okay across the board for Braveheart, as far as their dual lanes are concerned. Still not completely sold in this mid lane, however.
Right now he's doing well. 11 and 10 compared to 11 and 4. Pretty much trading even. Slight advantage for the Gyrocopter. And the missile spam is going to be very annoying. It's not a build we see very often on Gyrocopters, mostly because they're not lane mid. Gyrocopter in mid lane can afford to go for more points into the homing missile since he does get more experience innately. And once he gets level 6 on the Gyro, if SECC isn't careful, he could get caught out by the full burst combination, which does a lot of magic damage.
The problem with this is that down the line, he will have invested a lot of points into homing missile, which is nice. However, landing a homing missile on a Storm Spirit, just not going to happen. As long as he has mana, he could ball lightning straight into it, and then the homing missile pops and does nothing. Conversely, they could also just have repel, and then it just doesn't do anything. So this is maybe not a game where you would want to have a lot of points invested into homing missile, even though it does do a lot of damage, does a lot of work in lane. Later on, doesn't do as much. Up towards top, sure, in a little bit of trouble. Going aggressive towards Piao, gets pulled back into a static remnant and will get very easily picked off. Chan-Chan way too far away to help.
Yeah. Well, missile in mid going to be repelled off, and that's telling sign of what's to come for this missile build coming out from the Gyrocopter. If the Omni Knight isn't there, he can kill off this SF, but Melody Lovers has parked himself. And whenever the Omni Knight's there, killing off this SF is impossible. Down bottom lane, Shackle not going to latch to any trees. They have the Maledict and a little bit of poke damage onto Iwi, but nothing that's going to be lethal. Power Shot does connect, but I don't think that Maledict is high enough level. It is level 2. Not going to be a lethal dose of that Malediction.
towards the top. They're going to try to go for Chan Chan. They'll fall short there, but man, both offlane heroes, or I guess, the similar heroes, and the Jakiro and the Clockwork, having a rough time perhaps, but Jakiro's actually gone for Tranquil, so he can stick around and heal up just a little bit. Witch Doctor and Wind Ranger, it's an awkward lane.
Raises in mid.
Oh.
Gyrocopter dropping very low, but they won't be able to secure that kill.
Gyro gonna walk away, albeit barely. Maybe taking a quick trip back to the fountain by denying himself. No, he'll just walk it out there. But yeah, Shadow Fiend getting a couple raises to connect. Now 27-9, and Gyrocopter 16 for 10. Gyrocopter's base damage is fine to start off, especially with opening with the Wraith Band, but if he doesn't go for phase boots in this lane, even though he has a great projectile, he doesn't really stand much of a chance of outlasting the Shadow Fiend. Even without raises considered, Shadow Fiend is hitting for 100 a pop, and Gyrocopter's hitting for 70.
Yep, and now Shadow Fiend's going to get some really big stacks. That's a 4-stack in his large camp, and although he's not going to be able to farm that yet, he'll have a lot of gold in his pocket. Once he gets level 7, that's just money in the bank. He tries for another stack, and he does succeed. That's so much gold.
It's so easily accessed. That gold is going to be nice for the Shadow Fiend, obviously, but it's also going to be pretty sweet for the Omni-Knight just to be in the area while that happens, just for the experience. Up towards the top, they're going to go active towards Piao. Witch Doctor has made his rotation in. They will bring down the Storm Spirit. Maledict is lethal at this point, but they don't even need that. Gyrocopter's also going to arrive, has Call Down and a homing missile, though this homing missile is not going to work out. Tower should destroy it by the time it... Oh, maybe not. Maybe it'll connect, but it's not going to be followed up. It's a lot of heroes going up towards the top lane for Braveheart. It's really just the Wind Ranger who's actually going to get into a fight with the Jakiro right now. Looks like it will just be both heroes backing off, but trying to go for a push right now for Braveheart is kind of surprising to see. They are not the team with the Jakiro.
Yeah, it's an awkward timing window for sure, especially since the Clockwork doesn't have his level 6. Their initiation isn't as strong as it could be. They'll be able to take this tower eventually, but in that time, Shadow Fiend's putting a lot of damage on the tier 1 tower mid. They'll pull out the Gyrocopter, and pretty much any ground that they would have made up in top lane would have been met by SCCC. Aquila is going to be delivered to the Shadow Fiend, and it looks like he's going to have his bottle crowing out to him with his power treads. And now's the time for Shadow Fiend to farm up this stack with max out raises. Go for long raise, mid raise, and now angling for the last one. So much gold into his pockets.
It's kind of upsetting to see Melody Lovers not in the area. Omni-Knight just getting maxed out Purify will definitely help him out in the long run. He is stacking up a little bit, and Piao's going to clear out quite a sizable stack himself, so looks like Omni-Knight should be getting some experience in the grand scheme of things, but still, this is, would have been potentially level 5, level 6 territory for the Omni-Knight. Piao does grab level 6 off of that, does get a lot of cash himself, and just after that large transfusion of golds, that's going to put Newbee in a pretty good position as far as the gold status is concerned, with, of course, Jakiro being able to push. If Newbee.Young group up right now and go for a very similar play that Braveheart just pull up towards the top, they could actually get away with a tower push, and they might even be baiting Wind Ranger and Sure into a bad position to try to do that.
I think they'll wait until the Shadow Fiend has this mechanism before they ball up with everybody, but that timing window is coming up shortly, as Mech will be here in just a couple of minutes, as long as the Shadow Fiend keeps up at his current rate of farming. That's going to be a little bit more difficult with no more stacks to fall back on, but he's doing just fine for himself. Rubik's going to be in top lane, pulls off a couple of the creeps away from this tier 1, but the tower is slowly but surely falling down to 497 HP now as the catapult hits another time.
Well, while that tower is slowly falling, the mid lane tower is falling just a little bit faster. SC is hitting very hard at this point with maxed out souls, and well, there's not much that Braveheart can really do there with just the Gyrocopter. Yeah, call down and homing missile, it hurts, but it also takes quite a bit of mana, so if you don't actually get the kills off of that, the odds of you being able to reset, rearm, and go again, kind of low, even with a bottle. And with a bottle, you may be able to get another round off, but then you're using all your bottle charges just for mana, and then things get a little bit awkward there. Across the board, we're seeing a lot of passive activity, a lot of active tower pushing, but with like a couple of heroes, it's not really what you see all that often. Gyrocopter by himself cannot hold this tower.
No, Call Down will clear up the creeps, but Double Raise does that faster and more reliably from the Shadow Fiend. I'd expect him to drop a Call Down sooner rather than later, but no, he's actually just going to back off a little bit. There's your Call Down. It's only going to hit half of the creeps, though, and even then, not very impressive. Shadow Fiend will destroy the tower.
One creep took 2 missiles, and he's still alive and still charging forward. What a trooper. Tower's going to go down, and Storm Spirit, he's level 7. Shadow Fiend, Yeah, he's been under no pressure in the mid lane, so him sticking around is kind of understandable. It's like, hey, I've been getting a free roll mid lane so far. I could try to go for it a little bit more, but they also have a Jakiro who's ticking away at this bottom tier 1. With Liquid Fire, this tower is eventually going to fall, and even Windranger having a tough time dealing with that. I think it's just a matter of time before Newbee.Young decide to go for this bottom tier 1 in a truly aggressive fashion. Maybe it'll be once the Shadow Fiend gets his mech, but either way, the towers are going to start to fall soon for Bravehearts, and they have the level 7 from Clockwork. They have a lot of kill potential right now with the Visage Familiars as well. They just have to find their opening.
Yeah, and since the Shadow Fiend's going Mechanism, Ivy's freed up to go for other items. Looks like an Urn first, but then do a Yule Scepter would be really nice for the team. They'll bring in the Visage to secure some experience. He does have his level 6 on the Familiars are flying in the air, but yeah, this is looking pretty dangerous for Braveheart, I want to say. They're just kind of stalling out and waiting until they can set up kills themselves, and I think it's time that Qian makes a move on the Clockwork with his hookshot at the ready.
He's, again, not pushing as fast as the Jakiro. If he just rotates down to the bottom lane, him or the Witch Doctor, honestly, then they could do quite a bit, but instead they're just kind of awkwardly sticking up towards top, getting a marginal amount of farm. Yeah, it's nice and everything, but they're trading across the map, and the trades are not really working out for them. Even Piao, who's kind of been off map for quite a long time, Storm Spirit not syncing up in the top lane, that's a little bit too risky at this point, has just been jungling, and it's been working out pretty decently for him. He's second place in net worth. Top lane tower will finally actually go down. Looks like Fortify, well, not really doing much. As the Windranger gets a tower denied down towards bottom, it's going to be a nice tower swing in favor of Braveheart, as mid lane usually is going to be dropped, classically destroyed by Jakiro. Familiars, though, they land in a bad spot. Visage has no resummon for another 70 seconds. One Familiar is going to die for sure here. Second one will get away.
Still, you're down your one Familiar for 60 seconds. It's a sad time to be a Visage, especially since there's no Drow Ranger or Lycanthrope to buff up that bird. It's pretty much just a drop stun at this point, and that's not good enough. Mechanism completed on the Shadow Fiend. They'll start pressuring this tier 2 tower in the bottom lane, with Liquid Fire making it very easy for them to tank through a couple of those shots. But the biggest issue for Braveheart is that they're just not keeping up with this SF when it comes to net worth, and the Windranger is also falling a little bit behind. It's hard to accomplish that, but this SF is going completely unpunished. He's 0-0 and 0, yet he's at the top of the net worth chart handily.
And that's even with Bravehearts having so many ways of getting on top of the SF with the repel, or with the missile rather, as well as the hook shot. Finally, the Clockwork is going to leave that top lane, but he's still not actually doing anything. Like, he's 1-0-1, Chan score is not bad, but this is really where you want your Clockwork to be all over the map, all over, and just applying pressure to someone who's slow and clunky like a Jakiro, and he can't really do anything should he get hookshot trapped in the cogs 1v1 versus the Clockwork. But instead, these heroes are just walking around on Newbee's side without much of a care in the world, and that should not be the case. Like, right now, Newbee should be scared of dying to a Windranger, should be scared of dying to just burst damage from the Visage, but they're not. They're getting away with pretty much whatever they want, and whenever you let the enemy play their own game, even if you are playing the game that you want, it's never really going to be what you want to be doing.
At base case scenario, it's an even trade, and at this point, I think that Newbee will be more comfortable just taking even trades. The Omni Knight scales incredibly well into the late game, as does the Shadow Fiend, the initiation coming out from the Storm Spirit. There's no natural Diffusal Blade carriers coming out from Braveheart, and I don't think we'll see one. Looks like Braveheart are just going to go for the passive train. It's a Midas pickup for the Windranger. Although this is a good item to have on her, she really does scale well with the levels and farm as the game progresses. It's going to hurt their ability to fight now, and I think Newbee.Young have an opportunity where they could just barrel down, go down top lane, take that tier 1, and subsequently the tier 2 tower, as long as they find a good initiation.
Windranger does so much better, I think, if you go for like a 4-staff build, or even if you just go straight Maelstrom, Aghanim Scepter, try to get some aggression on the board. Yes, she does do quite a bit with what she has just in her base skills, but this Hand of Midas, as I said, can very easily be punished. Not right now, however. Both smokes are going to be used, and both smokes will accomplish absolutely nothing, except for getting each team into a position where they can go for a push. The problem is Bravehearts, they do not push as fast as the Newbee side. They lack the damage dealer of a Shadow Fiend, even with the DD rune. That's kind of cheating, but still, he's going to be hitting very hard. Plus, Liquid Fire is going to preserve the creep wave a little bit longer. So Bravehearts, though they may eventually get this tower, Newbee, they can keep going, and Bravehearts really can't.
Yeah, tier 1 for tier 1 tower trade looks like that's going to happen easy enough with the glyph spent on either side. Both the tier 1s will fall pretty closely to each other, but there's no stopping Newbee.Young. They didn't even pop the double damage rune for the Shadow Fiend, so if they're able to get towards this tower, it's going to fall very quickly. And if a fight breaks out close by, the Shadow Fiend will be trucking with an extra 90 damage under his disposal. Tier 2 tower is going to be under heavy siege. They have another glyph as that has been refreshed, and they're pulling back, getting ready to fight. They have a familiars resummoned, so they're going to have all of their familiars ready for this engagement. One's flying in from the south, so that could also be relevant. But the tier 2 is already down with no initiation from either team. I think it's too late.
At this point, they just should leave. Everyone should just leave. Newbee get obviously away with a little bit more than the Braveheart side. Chan wasn't even going up to that, so it looks like the Clockwork just conceded his tier 2 tower. And that's a tough call to make. Like, obviously your towers are going to be under a lot of pressure anyway because there's a Jakiro on the other end, but still, you have so much in the way of nuking power and damage that you can get some pickoffs, and it could be pretty good for Braveheart. Otherwise, like, yeah, Visage does decently late game, Witch Doctor as well, but they're sitting on a Soul Assumption that's only been casted like 2 or 3 times throughout the course of this game. I feel like Newbee.Young just get away with a whole lot more than they really should, and 2 tier 2s, or 2 towers rather, gonna give Shadow Fiend a lot towards his BKB, gonna help the Omni Knight complete up his Soul Ring, 4 staff now up on the Jakiro, and Newbee obviously can just go for a little bit more. They clearly have enough damage to take down these towers, and if Bravehearts really don't want to fight, then Newbee should look for those fights.
Yeah, they're currently sitting on a 5,000 net worth advantage, experience advantage of about 4k, and I think just based on the item pickups from both teams, they're a little bit stronger. You have the Midas on the Wind Ranger, and also the Clockwork is committed to a casual Vitality booster at this point. I don't think he's going to upgrade into the Vanguard. Even if he does, I think the item is just going to be sitting as in his inventory, offering the Clockwork a little bit more tank, but that's about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Vanguard's the build in this game. Like, even Crimson, yeah, Newbee, they hit kind of hard with the Shadow Fiend, and Storm Spirit's right clicks are relevant as well, but overall, they're not really a right-clicking based team. They're more of a initiation team fight based team. They're going to maybe get baited into going for these familiars, as Bravehearts are in a decent position to punish. It's not going to happen, though. Shadow Fiend does get his BKB delivered, and with the engine of Jakiro, they'll keep on going for this bottom lane. Piao is going to get stunned up a couple times. However, Hookshot going to connect into a friendly familiar. Piao's going to get purified, and he'll turn things around with Repel. Right, going around to Chan. Cog's not available, gets hit with the Ice Path, and he will go down. Cog's now up, but that's not relevant at all. There's the call down, which will connect onto a couple heroes, but Shure's already in a lot of trouble, going deep into the trees. Piao slowed down by a Shackle Shot, low on mana as well. Going to give Shure a free way out of there. Tower is denied as well. For Bravehearts, they pretty much trade the Clockwork for a tower deny. Not too terrible, I don't think, but Newbee could go for another tower, and you can't sacrifice your Clockwork every time.
No, and they're also not getting any farm while this is happening. The Gyrocopter isn't farming inside their woods. They pulled him back in, and even if he was, he would have been spotted out, and this Ancient Stack getting stolen is a big deal for this game. Newbee.Young are going to find a triple stack that is probably not going to be contested, and if it is, it's down Hookshot, and Braveheart don't have great chances. It looks like Newbee.Young are going to back off before they get caught out in that situation, but still, that's scary. They need to protect this asset. It's Joey's avenue back into this game. Gyrocopter needs this.
He's going to get most of it, so yeah, it could have been definitely a lot worse for the Braveheart side, but still Newbee.Young get a little bit of it. If they had full mana there, or more mana across the board, then yeah, that would have been really bad for the Braveheart side, but instead just a minor loss there of, maybe some of the small golems or something like that. Not too terrible, but next tower is probably going to fall shortly as Bravehearts, now they finally have a Clockwork in a good position. Chan will not throw a hook shot, didn't have vision there, and well, didn't know who was right behind the Jakiro, so making a little bit of a safer play, but this is going to be a much slower game kill-wise, yet still these objectives are being taken. Bravehearts are just kind of rolling over and taking it. The upside here is that the Wind Ranger is kind of getting to a point where Hand of Midas is going to be, kicking into gear for her, but still, is that going to be worth losing all your towers for?
Yeah, compare her net worth to that of the Shadow Fiend, the Storm Spirit. The Storm Spirit still has advantage, even with the Midas up for the Wind Ranger, and Shadow Fiend is super stacked. He has BKB mechanism up to almost 1,700 gold on top of that all, and this is not looking great for Braveheart, but if they can hold high ground and hold this last tier 2 tower in mid lane, they'll eventually get value out of their heroes. A super stacked Wind Ranger and a stacked Gyrocopter can very easily turn this game into Braveheart's side. I'm really sad that the Clockwork hasn't been more active, however. The Clockwork, he's been involved in every kill that Braveheart have taken. They just haven't taken more than 2.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much we could, say, oh, Clockwork be more active. Maybe it's just a call of Bravehearts to be super passive and kind of concede these objectives. But again, Newbee, they're going to take a tier 2 tower. The push is there from Bravehearts in the side lane in the meantime, but Newbee do not have to stop. In fact, they don't want to stop. They want to keep going with Jakiro. Familiars up in the air will be dropped, slowing this down a little bit, but Liquid Fire and SC with a ton of damage. Where are Bravehearts? Their Gyrocopter's still pushing this bottom lane, really wants this tier 2. It looks like it might be even trades though. Cass gonna bounce through, Piao gonna get stunned up once, power shots being traded back and forth, but with the sustain that they have from the Omni Knight, I don't think Newbee.Young really have to worry about this all that much. They have the mech already popped, Purify is there. It's going to be tier 2 for tier 2 tower trade ultimately, but tier 3 is so easily now destroyed by the Newbee.Young side.
It makes translating a teamfight victory into high ground push very easy for Newbee.Young. Next time around that happens, Piao has a Bloodstone up and running on the Storm Spirit, and I think Newbee.Young, the next major objective that they'll want to find is Roshan, but Gyrocopter call down onto the Omni Knight, but I'm not sure if this is going to work out unless there's a hookshot in. They'll find the hookshot. Purification is there from Melody Lover, so Purify himself, Witch Doctor Ultimate, is going to be channeled. They focus it mostly on his Shadow Fiend, but will kill off the Omni Knight just the same. A decent pick off for Braveheart, but they won't be able to get anything off of this.
Yeah, they do force out a 10-second BKB charge to the Shadow Fiend though, and they finally get some action across the board, and that was pretty easy as well. Of course, they do get the jump on the Omni Knight with a call down from a good angle, so you can't always depend on that to happen, but still, they have so much killing power that they've been sitting on and actively not using that it's kind of refreshing to see something happening in this game. Newbee.Young, the death of the Omni Knight is not going to bother them too much. In fact, they're definitely a lot more concerned with the fact that they just lost their BKB charge on the Shadow Fiend. Going for Roshan is probably going to be the next big objective, and for Newbee.Young, they have a Shadow Fiend with sustain behind him, and Bravehearts, though they do have a Clockwork to scout it out, they have, not a great Roshan fighting lineup.
Yeah, Witch Doctor Ultimate's okay, Gyrocopter cooldown's pretty good, but you're dealing with a Jakiro that excels inside those closed spaces, a Storm Spirit that's amazing between the Flying Vision and everything else that Storm Spirit offers, especially since he's so good with the Aegis of the Immortal. So, yeah, I think that's going to be the next course of action. It'd be a lot easier to push high ground if they have a second life on one of these big cores.
Or we could just sit here and, farm up for another 20 minutes while not killing each other. It's actually kind of interesting to see, in a really weird definition, but the Rubik, because, nothing has been happening, has not been dying, and he's been getting a lot of farm. He has what looks like to be a soul booster on the way. Had a point booster. I thought he was going to go for Aghanim since he could steal quite a few nice Aghanim skills in this game. But still, this guy is tanky as all hell. 1200 HP on Rubik is just not supposed to happen.
I don't think I've ever seen a support Rubik go Bloodstone first. And if it did happen in a game that I was watching, it was an absolute stomp fest. This is a very interesting choice. I would have personally rather seen Blink, and that Ags that you're describing is really good. Hookshot. The Witch Doctor Ultimate, Power Shot, heck, even the Gyrocopter and Visage's Ultimates are great to have Aghanim's upgrades when you're a Rubik. Yeah, so we'll just wait and see how that pans out for him. What it does offer Rubik is it makes him a lot tankier, and he can spam out his spells very reliably without having to worry about mana. It's still a ways off, but an interesting development nonetheless. Roshan going to be dropping very low, and it looks like it's going to be straight up taken by Newbee.Young. Clockwork is there, he's going to hookshot into the pit, but now he's isolated, doesn't get the Aegis Snatch. Now Chen is going to go down. They used the BKB on the Shadow Fiend. That was a little bit unnecessary, but now they might lose more. Zippin, the Witch Doctor's going to get jumped, pulled back by Piao, and that is going to be a dead Witch Doctor. 2 kills and 2 Bloodstone charges for Newbee.Young.
And Ranger trying to do something up towards top will get shoved away by the Shadow Fiend. I feel like in this game, Bravehearts, they don't really want to be playing a game of Dota, right? It kind of feels like that. They're just farming everywhere. Chaoyui's farming the enemy Ancients right now, is not going to get interrupted out of this TP, so he won't get punished there. But, man, Bravehearts, they just give away Roshan. When you're down all your tier 2s, when your tier 3 is so close to death, you don't give away Roshan like that. And especially having a Clockwork just go in like that. Having a Clockwork YOLO dive is fine if you're super behind. You have to make that type of play, but they have fighting power. They could have fought there. And they're now even going to lose Chaoyui potentially. He's going to pop BKB, try to book it. Call down will slow down SC a little bit. Should buy him escape, although here comes Piao. Right click damage, not quite going to be there. Cask is there, and Meow Piao, he's overcommitted, but he does have the Aegis, so he doesn't care. Familiar is actually in a bad position. Looks like they should lose one at the very least. That is not resummonable. And Bravehearts now with no BKB on the Gyrocopter have to deal with high ground push.
They cancel Storm Spirit's regen before it gets him up to full mana, but with a 10 charge Bloodstone, he's going to be back up and running very shortly. Since this tier 3 was already so low, it's going to fall in just a matter of right clicks. They'll get a Shackle Latch onto Piao, but the focus damage isn't there, and he's going to zip straight in onto the Wind Ranger, trying to focus her down. They'll lose the Wind Ranger. She has buyback, but she really doesn't want to use it. BKB popped by the Shadow Fiend. He almost constantly has magic immunity. Storm Spirit's gonna lose his Aegis. That's a little bit sad for them. Cooldown going to be dropped. Clips onto the Jakiro as well as onto the Omni Knight. Omni Knight low. Will he just solo assumption? But Melody Lovers will purify himself, and that'll save his life. And now with the repel over onto Piao, Piao's going to jump in, going straight for the Clockwork. Isolated in his own cogs. He'll be pulled out and then right click to death. Zip forward onto both the Visage as well as the Witch Doctor. These supports are dropping so low, and Focus Fire or not, looks like Piao will be able to zip home free. Paralyzing Gas will bounce to Jakiro, then to the Shadow Fiend once. Iwi turns around for an Ice Path onto the Witch Doctor, far from lethal onto the Witch Doctor. And Braveheart do repel the enemy's side, but the Shadow Fiend and the Storm Spirit survive.
At a super steep cost as well. Bravehearts are forced to buy back with 2 of their heroes. They burn the Aegis, they kill off the Jakiro, which is nice, I guess, but man, that's such a steep cost, and they lose the tier 3 as well. Rax's, luckily for Bravehearts, is still surviving, but this is what happens when you just don't do anything for 25 minutes and let the enemy team push your towers. You find yourself in a position where, hey, you're kind of far behind because you're not taking towers while the enemy is. Newbee.Young, they walk in, they keep the Shadow Fiend in the back, they have the Omni Knight heals constantly flowing, they have the Liquid Fire flowing as well, and Piao taking a lot of attention away from his allies, making it so that Bravehearts really have a tough time choosing their targets. And they get away with a pretty clean win. It's not as big of a loss for Bravehearts as it could be since their Raxes are still alive, but Newbee.Young have all of their ultimates soon, and 80 seconds Omni Knight will have a Guardian Angel. I'm not even sure how relevant that GA was though. They could just go in again, this time with the Bloodstone also on the Rubik. So they also have a Orchid on Storm Spirit, plus a DD rune, plus a Demon Edge on Shadow Fiend. This is going to be round 2, and I'm not sure if Bravehearts are ready for round 2.
Long zip in from the Storm Spirit down to the bottom lane. Piao with this DD is going to look to kill off the Witch Doctor. Voodoo Restoration is going to work. He'll earn himself up and will survive. But Piao's just flexing his muscles. With 13 charges on his Bloodstone, he can afford to do this because he's already back up to half mana.
They also have a pipe on the Jakiro, so sitting in Call Down is now a viable strategy for Newbee.Young, or at least a tactic. They're going to go for the melee racks, Chan-Chan's, Cogs, and next to nothing. Okay. Like, at a certain point, Bravehearts, you guys gotta, like, go ahead and do something, because you can only sacrifice so much before you're just gonna lose the game. They don't even have, like, a Medusa behind this. If they were, trading these objectives for a Spectre farm, then fine, so be it. But they're not. They're going to run to a Witch Doctor right now, Newbee, and they'll obliterate this hero. Cask is going to actually stay in for a little while longer. Get onto Sure as well. Now SC pops his BKB, just trading hits with Chaoyue. With Wind Ranger in the back end, they're doing a lot of damage to the Shadow Fiend, but far from enough. Chaoyue's going to fall. Chan-Chan's going to try to go for this Rubik, but he has a Bloodstone, so tanky, and Chan-Chan will fall very short, even with the repel on him accidentally being casted by Melody Lovers. This was the most anticlimactic game of Dota of all time. I don't even know if anticlimactic's the right word, just not climactic.
There wasn't anything to reach to a climax at all.
Yeah.
Anticlimactic would be if there was a lot of build-up and then it just kind of fell flat. There wasn't build-up. This was a flat line game. It was pretty much just a victory for Newbee.Young as they use the map more efficiently than Braveheart. Get a lot of farm in their Shadow Fiend, Storm Spirit. As you said, if there was a clear late game advantage for Braveheart, it makes a little bit of sense that they just try to trade farm for as much time as possible. But it's a win-range Gyrocopter. Although there are no slouches in the late game, they're not going to 1v5 the enemy team. So yeah, we'll just have to see if Braveheart can pick up the aggression in game number 2. Honestly, I was a little bit disappointed. Braveheart, from the games that I saw previously, were a very fun and exciting team to watch.
I saw them run, like, weird stuff also, so, like, they kind of went off book slightly, like Wind Ranger Visage. It's not super common, but they didn't do anything in this game. I think if you're going to win a game of Dota, here's some pro tips, guys. Doing things, getting objectives, getting kills, yeah, go ahead and do that. So if Bravehearts can do that, man, they have a chance for game 2. But if they just sit back and do nothing again, there's no chance for them whatsoever. Newbee.Young claim a victory for free. They didn't have to work very hard for it, and they are one game away from knocking Braveheart out. Guys, I'm Mikelorus. I'm joined by GrandisV, and we'll both be right back for game 2, which will hopefully have something.